Hi, I'm Dan Garms, and this is our first podcast for Green and Shy. Tonight, I'm joined by my sidekick, Alton Erdemir, along with Tom Howard, attorney extraordinaire.
What's going on, everybody?
Participated in a number of our events in the past, and we're looking forward to educating you tonight on the legal aspects of the cannabis industry, as well as other things you might have in mind. I've been in this industry for a few years, but I've experienced cannabis for most of my life. Grew it when I was young. I got involved again about 20 years ago when my wife, who had passed away, had cancer. And we found the medical benefits of it. And as a result, I've really dedicated the rest of my life into the clinical research side. I enjoy this industry and the good that it brings, and looking to find more efficacy in the different types of strains and the cannabis growth laws that are available. We'd like to see that become more mainstream. So Alton, would you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into this industry?
Well, that's interesting. Thanks, Dan. And, you know, with a big sales and investment banking kind of capital raising background internationally, working for companies in Dubai and things like that, it's hard to really get into an industry here in Illinois when there was no opportunities for cannabis. So, it really takes opportunity, and it's similar to situations like this, you have to find solutions. So really, when I was raising capital for companies, I found a lot, especially on the West Coast, Washington, Vancouver, California, that had awesome extraction devices, especially for the medical side, that were raising capital. Unfortunately, they just, they weren't a good fit for the Middle East and China that I was working with at the time. So I'm sure you can imagine why, but, I started making connections here. And really, once the opportunity came in Illinois, I found it very difficult to find open positions. Well, at least that's the caliber I was looking for, director of sales, stuff like business development. So what I decided was, I ran into some good opportunities with some great companies like Leafly. They have an amazing educational program. In fact, I ended up doing their bud tending course just so I had the knowledge and the background, not just the technical aspect. And from there, really just started building my resources so that the opportunity came, then, I had every aspect covered. And that's where we all started joining together. We already did awesome networking events. And, that's what the Green and Shy event we put together. It's a platform for opportunities for everybody, really connecting people to opportunities, whether you want to learn like I was doing, taking bud tending courses. I know we have High Haven and all these other courses that work with us and have different, learning education. Even Tom does things on the application side, but it's also to connect people with job opportunities. Like yourself, I know you have the Cannabis Search Group. You do a lot of good jobs as far as placements. I'm sure that's very busy right now, but also people that want to start their business. I know Tom's working with a lot of groups. So platforms like this really allow for someone like myself or anyone out there to take the skills that they have and really improve on them, because I said this at our panel discussion, but you can't really put on your resume, 10 years of private market research and neighborhood, cannabis consultant. You can't get away with that, but you can show that you have the knowledge and that you have the experience. So that's kind of what I'm doing. And now we provide a number of things like your Cannabis Search Group, Appointments IQ is another company we work with that provides sales, fractional sales, marketing campaigns for cannabis companies as well. And, things are going from there. So it's really important. And take note of that right now. It's kind of a reflection on that, because if you look at what people are doing, not nobody, thank goodness we have people on the front lines that are essential and have to help us out, like the nurses and all that. Like Brooke, I know she's a nurse. She's one of our repeat sponsors with Prime My Body. We really appreciate people like yourself. But, everyone else, they had to change how they're doing work if they're lucky to still have something to work on right now. And that's kind of what you have to do. You have to reinvent yourself. And it's the branding about it. And, that's what Green and Shy is all about. So I hope that gives you a little insight there.
Great. Tom, tell us about what you've been up to lately. Because I know you're busy. It's hard to get in touch.
Yeah, I've been working the Dickens off, and then I thought we were having a fireside chat here. So I sat next to a fireplace, and then I brought a nice pretty girl along, which I would describe as fire. This is some Bubba Squanch from Mephisto Genetics. And so, I live downstate, and that's where I'm from. And so I haven't been able to be in Chicago now for over a month. because of the corona or the SARS-2 that's going around, and it kind of stinks. But I did do a lot of applications with the parties that we had and our clients, and so they've been submitted. But now they've extended the deadline again to April 30th, and I hear that there's rumors that there's going to be a supplement that the state's going to allow, so that all these teams that thought they had this deadline, and then you know how it is, this would be shorter and more complete if I had more time, and so all these teams feel like they've been jolted out of that, as they had to try to apply by the original deadline of March 16th. And then I was advocating my teams be done by March 12th. And I'm not sure if I'll ever do that again, because you just never know in the real world, to see whether or not, maybe you should show up in the last day. But then it turned out to be post-dated the last day. And so there was no real reason why you shouldn't have been waited to post-date the last day. But I did it again. I'm like, yeah, but you get it in. And I don't think there's going to be another extension. And then there was another extension on March 28th, which was very strange for an executive order, because it was on a Saturday. Usually the executive orders come out by Friday. And so I did a lot of craft grower applications and learned a whole bunch. And I've been growing this beautiful little thing for the past few months, which is nice. I've taken it out. It's an auto flower, so I'm not too worried about screwing it up. It's also a home grow. I have my medical card, so I'm allowed to do it. There's no children in here. My doors are locked. Nobody can see in. Trying to comply with the state's law here, but it smells so lovely. And now that I can actually see it, I can see that I've missed some defoliation in certain parts, but it's going to yield some good colas, and that'll keep me well stocked into the future.
That's good. So what are some of the biggest issues for craft growers today that are applying for a license in Illinois and other states?
It would probably be the real estate. The real estate is a huge issue, simply because of the not in my backyard impact that a lot of people have. And then you have to really partner with your community. So if somebody feels like they haven't been, and I shouldn't say paid off, but I might need to characterize it as included or consulted when you're bringing this stuff into their community, this beautiful, wonderful, dense colas. I filmed the top. And so the filming allowed these 4 main colas at the top. It was kind of, I wasn't sure if it was going to work, but it did. And the real estate and the zoning have probably been the biggest impediments, aside from the access to capital, because we explained to them, like, there's capital that's out there, but you need to be a sophisticated player to be able to access that capital. You're going to also need to pay extra down. And so, like, you're going to need to have a lot of money for your expenses and your operations, but then also to put down to access the larger amount of capital that you need for your cultivation build-outs, or your extraction build-outs, or your infusion build-outs. The dispensaries are, you might be able to do that on a personal loan if you have the sophistication behind you and you know exactly what you need to build, to buy. Yeah.
And Tom, just going on that, and thank you for that. A lot of people hear, a lot of, the rules or information like that. We're not going to hold it to you, but could you put some numbers to that so people know what to expect? What are they looking at if they want to get into that? I mean, how much do they need to raise? Or like you said, if someone can do it alone, is there options that they should look into?
Oh yeah, there absolutely is. And that's one of the products that we're putting together right now. And it's, we're calling it the Cannabis Starter Package, because we get calls from all over the country, and we're like, well, where's your state at? And then I'll pull it, I'll look, I'll see, like, okay, this state's got these types of things. You're probably going to be coming online here. Great, we have time. Let me tell you why time's going to be necessary, depending on how whatever state has written its law. And for a dispensary, I would say budget $1 million. Raise $1 million, have $1 million. You can definitely do it for less than that. You can definitely do it for half than that. But economies of scale happen as you have scale. I mean, like, you have that wisdom through being understanding how you open up all these things and what it takes to get those numbers. But the numbers can be pretty good for dispensaries, depending on how exclusive the license is and how large the population is, even after you pay off all the taxes. But the numbers to get into it, there's 2. There's the valuation on the front end. Well, let's talk only about competitive applications as opposed to applications which are more mandatory. Those are probably more of the past and less of the future. The future is probably more competitive applications because people see that there's this green rush, there's this opportunity, and so they want to put some merit into it and enough complexity so that they have to hire one of the big 4 accounting firms, and then there's enough disguising of where is going and what is happening, so somebody might have gotten bought off to get a license. But if that didn't happen and somebody loses, you can still sue the state and maybe get a license. And so that changes your budgets, you know, because what if you had to have budgeted another $200,000 to sue the state to settle for a license because you were graded incorrectly? Or if you, yeah, the graded incorrectly can be a big thing, and that's huge litigation right now in Missouri. But also, if you're lucky enough to get in, those people that are lucky enough to get in had to have put such an application together that is so complete and has so many pages and has had so much thought, time, and money on like so many different types. I mean, it's not just the lawyers, it's not just the consultants, it's the accountants, it's the actual people on your team that spent the time, and like, you know, they're good members of the team. So if it's in a retail, like you have somebody who has retail experience. You also have somebody on the team that's out in the community winning over all the hearts and minds. Like letters of recommendation don't matter, but you don't want to get kicked out of your own community or yeah, not even be let in. So it can be expensive to get in, but the stuff is selling for quite a lot of money, and there's a lot that's being sold. Illinois sold $36 million of it last month, you know, for only adult use, not medical. Yeah.
I'm sure those are the big differences between someone that gets a dispensary on the outskirts of Chicago and the new Sunnyside in River North.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of data in the industry regarding kind of hacking the placement of the real estate so that it can be the most profitable. And you'll see that happens in state boundaries very often. So there's some very profitable dispensaries in the boundary, and there'll be some very profitable dispensaries on, say, the boundary of Illinois and Iowa, Wisconsin, and Indiana. And Kentucky, we're really hopeful about Kentucky going medical and opening up that. And Missouri was looking like it was just a rocket ship, you know, destined to adult use. But, you know, it's pretty hard for you to sign my petition when you're in Chicago and I'm in Peoria. So I don't think that's going to get on the ballot. Yeah.
Can I air sign it right now?
No, that's not how it works.
Tom,
you only do that for voting. Yeah.
Another question would be is, how many of these craft growers licenses are available, and actually how many applications are going in for those, and what does it really take to be a winner with so many people wanting to be in this industry?
Oh yeah, I think the winners will probably be like well over 1,000 pages, probably over $5 million in capitalization, an exceedingly well thought out plan. Everybody, like their exhibit P for it, their financial disclosures, and everybody who has an interest in the company, that one would have been a brick, like, you know, 200, 300 pages long. And they have to have thought out like who is on, like every seat on the bus to a certain extent, or in the orchestra is kind of conceived and filled more or less. Plus they have the money, plus they have the experience, plus they have the social equity. And then you can see, like, you know, who's on their board? Oh, they got the mayor on their board. Okay, well, you know, that could mean something a lot more than just having them be a letter of recommendation. And maybe not the mayor, but somebody who's like important and powerful and connected. So you are conveying trust to the state of Illinois that you are not going to have any of your cannabis do anything improper. That's really important. Like, how well are you demonstrating your compliance with the law, but also your financial wherewithal and business acumen to be trustworthy enough to be given that cannabis license, or your team to be given that cannabis license. It's not just going to be a guy, it's not just going to be a maverick. And if that happens, there will probably be lawsuits about, like, that guy beat us? No way, you know?
Tom, are you working in consulting in any other areas other than the legal side of the cannabis industry right now?
No, I'm just working in consulting for cannabis. I'm not doing any well, yeah, web. I started my my business as my business, as opposed to being a W-2 employee about 2 years ago now. And I tried to sell at the same time SEO and web design consulting software services in conjunction with the law. And that turned out to be a fool's errand because it was just immensely more profitable to take everything that I know about SEO and web and technology, and then just infuse that into my law practice. And then just, you know, my phone explodes, everybody else's phone's dead. They don't understand sales. They don't understand putting together a deal. And then that built me. And now I'm kind of at this point in my legal career where I'm looking at law and being like, well, I'm really limited here and I'm limited there. So maybe law might have just been a stepping stone to being straight up consulting, but you absolutely need the web kind of consulting, the SEO, how it works, why people are on your website, what keeps them on your website, how come they're going to buy from your website, how easy you make it for them to buy on your website, how, you know, all those things. And so that's one of the reasons why, you know, in less than 2 years, I was able to go from absolutely no website to result one for cannabis lawyer in the world, well, in the country, which is pretty cool, you know.
Also, you know, that it's interesting. I watch your podcast weekly on Wednesdays, Cannabis Legalization News, and it's a really good show. And what have you gained from some of the national contacts that you've had on your show? What has it done for you in Illinois?
Oh yeah. Well, a lot of it makes people, when they know who you are because they've seen you before, they trust you already. They already feel like they have a personal connection with you. It's really, really powerful. That's something that YouTube has never been able to give. That's something that only, like, it didn't exist until like television or movies was a thing. You know, you'd have to go see stage and, you know, Homer recite the Iliad, like way back in the day. But yeah, right. You know, and so like the ability to have like a personal relationship with somebody who is curious about the service offering that you're providing, and you're educating that person with that service offering, you're conveying trust immediately, and you're also conveying a personal relationship. So just like people think that they know celebrities, they don't. They clearly don't. But they've seen them enough that they recognize them. And it gives you that type of exposure in marketing, which is just, it's just so priceless. And then if you're able to, like, you know, kind of develop an audience, Google owns YouTube. And so they kind of reward you if you understand how the Google search algorithm works. And so you're making content that is Google approved. You're helping them, they're helping their users that have questions about the cannabis industry. And so the better that we answer those, and then, you know, people will call and they'll want our help. And then we're like, great, we absolutely want to help you. I can't wait to smoke your delicious cannabis, or go to your retail store and buy cannabis from you. But like in Illinois, it can be vertical, so you can be doing both. And so it's just been a very, very amazing last 2 years, for lack of a better term. And I know enough about Google search algorithms to know that they really don't start maturing and start leveling off until after like year 3. And so it's like, and then, because we know all this stuff, we're just kind of taking whatever segment that's next and then helping them, so that when somebody who's trying to get into the cannabis industry in the next state or the next country wants to get in, we're going to be there educating them, and we're going to be there talking about them, you know?
To piggyback off that, I got a little CQ, a little Corona question for you. Mm-hmm. With everything that's going on, I know the application deadline already got pushed back once, right, at the end of the month.
Twice.
But
it got pushed. That was the second pushback.
The second pushback. That's right. That's right. But with that correlating with kind of the peak of what they're saying, cases of Corona in Chicago, is it realistic to assume that these applications are going to be processed in a normal fashion with all the resources being focused on that? And is it possible that things could be pushed back even further?
Yeah.
Is there makeup for it as well to make up for the people that are missing out because of all this pushback?
Well,
So
again,
kind of a complex question.
yeah, it is, but there will be delays. The delay would require, I think, the governor to say, like, because of this, we're going to delay the announcement of winners and these licenses until such and such time. I think because they built it into the statute. The statute didn't contemplate coronavirus. And so because of that, Pritzker will probably use an executive order to continue out the award of at least the cultivation, the craft grower, the transport of the infuser licenses, because that's been delayed by 6 weeks. But it also, out of comedy, which is basically like principles of equality and craft from my legal days, they may also kick out the dispensary awards for another 6 weeks to 8 weeks as well. And I've heard that from some consultants out of Springfield, but you have to understand, they didn't put that contract out to bid and award it to KPMG until March 9th. So my first request for evidence or request for or notice of deficiency, 10-day notice, I guess it would be called in the parlance of cannabis Illinois times, that didn't come out until last week, and it was due on Friday. And so we handled that. But there are 10-day notices now, and now the algorithm is going through everybody's application and fly specking it. And I have some belief that blanks, if there were any blanks in any of your contracts, that's probably getting you like a 10-day notice. So don't leave blanks.
Yeah.
Tom, what do you think some of the biggest challenges are on a worldly scale with other countries legalizing in South America, for instance, Colombia, Uruguay? What do you see the biggest challenges be coming down the pike in the future for the industry?
The problems that I would have in South America would probably be legal, in the sense that you have a new industry, and in Mexico, for example, they have the grift on the avocados. I mean, so like there's corruption in South America and there's organized crime. So that could, I mean, like there's the not in my backyard, and then there's the politicians that are like, well, how am I going to profit from having this cannabis company in my area? Now take that and remove all the due process and the protections and the laws and the respect for law that we have in America. And then you're in South America. Now, prove me wrong, Colombia, prove me wrong. But, when you have a commodity-based product that creates a large cash flow, that is in a country that has less of a rule of law than we have here, and less full faith and credit into your government than we have here, there's more room for corruption. There's more room for cronyism. So one of the larger barriers to entry was, yeah, you're not his cousin, or you didn't pay him $150,000. And those are large barriers to entry. Or, you happen to have fallen down those stairs. When there is a cash flow that's in the millions, tens of millions, or billions of dollars that somebody can have, and they can buy off somebody, and they can just take it and not play by rules, that could be a barrier to entry,
So going forward, what do you think the most profitable side of the industry will be? Will it be the actual psychoactive side with the THC, or the CBD, CBN, the medical side with producing new and different strains that can be used in medical research as we go forward legally? Where do you think that lies?
I think it's a fairly large industry, and I think that the industry is just getting started. And so like there's the recreational aspects, there's the health and wellness aspect, there's the medicinal aspect, which may be like rolled into the health and wellness, but then there's the more difficult and capital intensive. It's not necessarily more difficult. We used to have it. And so like if I had Jack Hare's, he had models. So Jack Hare would have a model of the covered wagon that Wells Fargo still even uses today in their banking brand, or the sailing ship and so you would explain from the covered wagon and the sailing ship how the hemp plant was everywhere on both of these products. Anything that wasn't wood was hemp. And so the industrial applications, especially, well, this is a conundrum then, because the price of a barrel of oil right now is $3.12. Now that's an exaggeration. It's actually like $20, 20 to $25. And so but still, in 2008, when I became a stockbroker, the price of a barrel of oil was like $150 a barrel, and it cratered hard, but it was way up there. And then everybody was saying all these silly alternative energy sources would start to come online over the next 10 years, and they were right. And that also didn't take into consideration the Bakkens. But the complete mispricing that we've had, and it's not a mispricing, it's just straight up how it was. Think about how cheap it is to make plastic now at $20 a barrel of oil. Think how cheap that plastic, that petroleum plastic is. And then you have to think about how expensive the R&D that you need to make. Now, the flowers, of course, wouldn't be turned into the plastic. It's more in the stock, but this is grown for flower. It wasn't grown for cellulose, so you can make plastic out of it. But it's just so much more expensive, and then that's a big achievement. Same with hempcrete. Hempcrete, it depends, what your raw material costs are, and so hempcrete might be an insulation material one day, but where's the money?
I think that's a good plan B for those that have a hot CBD crop and can't sell it as CBD. That's a good dump off to the hempcrete plants, I think.
There's a new workaround there. There's a brand new workaround. This was real fresh in the sense that, again, the cannabis laws are essentially tech because they're always changing. And Illinois just released this thing that said that you're allowed to have your, if you have a hemp license and you're cultivating, you can sell your hemp biomass to the cannabis license holders so they can start refining and extracting it. And they would say putting CBD into it, but there's proprietary technology, and I've represented one of the scientists that's had it last year, that can transform Cbd isolate into THC. So if you are now a hemp grower, you can sell your hemp over to Revolution Cannabis, which would process it and then use this licensed technology to just flood the vape pen market and corner it, because they would be able to create their vape pens at a substantial, they aren't going to be using this stuff. They're going to be using the outdoor hemp to make their gummies and their vape pens, because THC is THC. They could add back in the terpenes. Terpenes usually aren't added back in edibles. I'm really excited about seeing Lagunitas hi-fi hops or lo-fi hops. I think lo-fi is a style of music, but hi-fi hops in Chicago once this virus passes. But when you take that isolate or the distillate and you strip out everything else, and then you change one chemical, CBD, into another chemical, THC, and then you use that, think about the profit margin on the gummies and the profit margin on the vape pens. Yeah. So those are some of the cool calls and technology that I've been seeing in the industry, aside from light depth greenhouses and LED lights and solar panels and all that crap. But it's pretty fun.
And going along with edibles, I just want to give a shout out to one of our repeat sponsors, Hosted and Toasted, Alicia and Ezra. If you guys are out there, we missed you guys, and we missed sampling your delicious your samples and your gift baskets. Look them up if you guys are interested.
So I have one left in my refrigerator.
They're delicious.
But one of these days, they're very special. So
now they have a hemp processing license. This is the problem, though. Hemp is agricultural and therefore essential. Now, the retail aspect of it. So if I'm growing hemp and then I'm extracting hemp and I'm making it into that delightful product that Hosted and Toasted makes, that delicious, delicious product, then suddenly I'm retail and I'm no longer essential. But maybe they could do, because they're food, maybe they could do curbside pickup or delivery, right?
They are actually, and you know what? They do creative things. I follow them a lot. I think Felicia and Ezra are great. I mean, who doesn't like a good cook? I love cooking myself, but they actually, if you follow them on Facebook, look them up, Hosted and Toasted, they've been doing these cool little games like buy a ticket to play these games like bingo that they do online and stuff together. There's these cool apps and stuff that people can use. I don't know if you've heard of House Party and stuff like that. And they're handing out prizes to people. So people are really getting, into how to keep in touch with people. And, that's why we want to do this. We want to make sure that our crowd, Green and Shy crowd, is still engaged, because I don't know about you guys, but that May 7th panel discussion, I felt such a good buzz. There's always a good buzz in Chicago, and there still is. But I think that went from seeing it all the time everywhere to not seeing it and still smelling it everywhere, but not seeing it as much, So I think it's important that everyone keeps doing what they're doing to innovate, because this will end. The curve, it's a bell curve. It'll go down, and we'll come back with better skills and much more connections, because you got to get innovative.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that, Alton. And I talk to people all over the country and all over the world on a regular basis based on my search and my consulting practice. And I'm just enjoying some of the people I get to talk to that are doing medical research in Germany, working with people in Pennsylvania that are build equipment that can process and make fiber, looking at people that want to use it as a bonding agent in the concrete industry, and people that want to use, as Tom was talking about, insulation. I mean, there's all kinds of new opportunities here. And I think a lot of the money in the future, Tom, both you guys, I'd like you to weigh in on this, but I think it's going to come down into ancillary funding for products that surround it, like in the gold rush days where they funded, picks and shovels for the miners and all the things that are ancillary. I think we're going to see that happen a lot in this industry. And I think there's just some opportunities that are incredibly great that are before us in the future here.
Tom, I've been hearing things about some laws or things being passed or talked about as far as the delivery side. I don't know if it's recreational, but on the medical side, I know in times like this, it's very needed. Have you heard anything about that? Because I know if there's a delivery program, there's some great companies out there that, can make it very interesting, because it might be difficult to do a delivery with the all cash business. There's a company like True Harbor. He's actually one of our past sponsors as well, but they have a approved payment mechanism that's in all 33 legal states. And it's not using the credit rails like your typical companies. It actually allows you to use credit cards, and they have a different process with blockchain and things like that. So if things like that get placed as far as delivery, things get very interesting as far as how we come out of this.
Yeah, no, how we come out of this and all that stuff, that we'll see. And like, these laws always evolve. But how they're doing it in other states is similar to what they've introduced in Illinois. The dispensary will have the right to deliver. So like the transporter, there's some conflation, but like so I'll get a transporter license and then I can deliver. That's not true. And so the bill that's been introduced to amend the current law that's there, and of course Illinois is not meeting right now. Very many of the legislatures all over the country aren't meeting right now, and but there's been that same type of way that they do the delivery in California, or they do the delivery in Florida. Illinois adopted that. It belongs to the dispensary. So that's going to push up the demand, of course, for the dispensary license. And then I just always like to disabuse the confusion of people thinking I'm going to get a transport license and I'll be able to do delivery. That's not how it appears to be set up. And Dan, I think you were right regarding these ancillary aspects to the industry. For example, Levi's Blue Jeans. Levi's Blue Jeans was a brand that was founded in the gold rush, and it's, I don't know. I mean, like, California has mushroomed as an economy. It's like one of the top 10 economies in the world. And that gold rush 150 years ago did help get it started. But the Levi's brand has survived, and that's irregular. But there's going to be new brands in this industry that are going to try to tackle new things, and a lot of those things can be. This isn't easy. It's easy as they can make it, but like growing the flower has been a well-heeled path. Using cannabis to replace plastics and insulation and building materials and creating, like, flooring and everything that you think that you could create from trees or oil, creating it from this plant, that's going to take investment and time and research. And I think that it's absolutely, and especially in Illinois, we got great dirt to grow stuff. And, you know, down here in these parts, you know, an acre, I remember I did an auction for acres 7 years ago. I think it fetched like $13,000 an acre. It's good dirt, but, you know, there was a kind of a bubble in real estate for agriculture in the early part of last decade. The whole point is that there's so much money in the ancillary and the businesses that haven't yet been thought about because they're necessary. Like, remember, cannabis is just kind of still visiting here in Illinois. There's not really been any new players at it. And because of that, there's no change. There's really no new job opportunities unless there's existing players that are trying to reshape their makeup of their employment so that they can qualify for other licenses by being a social equity applicant, because they realize that it's going to be difficult for them to win another license unless they have that, or unless they have an incubator for somebody that they partner with, whom later they buy.
Makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I believe companies like Cresco, Revolution, and Green Thumb Industries, these companies are going to be on a national scale. And right now, what I believe the long-term play is, the margins are going to dissipate over time. And it's really who knows how to run a good business on small margins. And it's about branding.
Just that. It's not just, it's about branding, but it's also about cost. I get people that are calling me all the time. It's like, get a light dep in there, get a light dep greenhouse in there. Let me show you how to do this. I'm like, all right, so we're going to get a light dep greenhouse. We're going to then have these solar cells there. We're going to make cannabis for 4 cents a gram. All right, we're gonna take Columbia's prices. We're gonna look at it and we're like, how close can we get it to Columbia's prices? But then have tariffs attached to Colombian cannabis so they can't flood our market just like we do now. And that's going to be a thing, because you're talking about creating, especially now with Corona, everybody's laid off, everybody needs a job. This is an essential industry, and like, again, the manicuring on this, the defoliation. I should have gotten more sugar leaves off there. I just thought they looked nice. You know, I'm not growing it for a profit. I'm growing it because I'm like, holy crap, this is cool. I'm growing cannabis. And those types of things are going to be what gets ironed out over the next few years as cannabis as an industry really comes to the Midwest, with Michigan and Illinois establishing it, and Missouri hot on our heels, and South Dakota that really wants to come in as well. And then hopefully we just break it wide open, and it's Ohio, it's Kentucky, it's Wisconsin. You know, that's the thing that people don't realize. Like, the population of Washington State, the population of Kentucky are about the same. You know, the population of Colorado and the population of Tennessee are about the same. Everybody's like marveling at the market that they have in Washington or in Colorado. It's like, that's just basically a Tennessee and a Kentucky, and we need to have another one of those just to get one Illinois. You know, and then there's New York, and then there's Texas, and then there's Florida. And so the more that we can advocate for the type of licensure process that they have in Illinois, and the social equity aspect of it, and also the limitations as to owning all the licenses, because businesses tend toward M&A, toward consolidation. So if you can start horizontal as possible, like you can with Illinois, because they cap you. You're only allowed to have 10 out of the possible 500 dispensary licenses, or 3 out of the possible 150 craft grower licenses, 2%.
And to correct me if I'm wrong, they also have things in place to stop people from buying a license and just holding it. You actually have to use it in a certain time frame and get things going. So in that kind of M&A practice, it's buying a functioning company, not just the license. So it's actually, right. From what I understand, good.
No, right. And so, like, it's pushing, because you have something that people want, they buy, there's a demand for it. All right. And then it's labor intensive. It's basically like strawberries at $2,000 a pound. All right. So strawberries, they're labor intensive. You have to water them. You have to make sure that they don't get burnt. You have to pick them when they're ripe. Somebody has to go out there and pick them. And I mean, now this stuff is way more like strawberries you pick. Okay, there you go. This, you have to pick it. You have to dry it. There's a disagreement amongst dry trim versus wet trim. Evidently, dry trim makes for a better flavored smoke. And so you have to trim it, and then you have to weigh it, and then you have to package it, and then you have to label it, and then you have to put it into what they call a cannabis container. That cannabis container is then checked. Like all of this is checked from seed to sale in Illinois with BioTrack out west with Metric. And then it's shipped to wherever it's going to go. And there's algorithms. That's like the Bright House Media. Bright House Media. They were one of your speakers. I thought it was Bright House.
Andy.
Andy.
Right.
At the Godfrey event.
Yeah, their algorithms is scraping the website so that when it updates its inventory, they're like, this is what's moving. And so all of that, I mean, it's a big industry, just despite people having this propensity to oversimplify it, because if you got a garden hose and the seed, you can make this, right? Yeah.
Well, not necessarily. That's a lot more difficult than my beautiful 5-foot snake plant, Rapunzel. Rapunzel's a very easy plant, but she's blooming as well. That's a lot more care. That's not just water in the morning.
No. This is a fertigation system and an hourly regimen and all this. So I'm like, it'll be fine for 2 hours. You know, famous last words.
Just to go along with that, a little update on Green and Shy, and then we'll kind of open it up for some questions here, or we'll continue if there aren't any. But, you know, Dan brought up a couple of things. These companies, you know, Cresco, you know, Green Thumb, all these ones, and, you know, it brought up a good memory of, you know, I used to love mixing with them at the conferences that we go to. I know you travel nationwide and go to a lot of these conferences, but especially with sports not going around, I love meeting them, not just to make the contact, but because of their merch. You know, I love representing Cresco, like it's my favorite baseball team and anything like that. And, you know, it's a good way because right now it's a time where it's not necessarily a competition to say who has the best what. It's more of a who. Like, if you know someone, everyone's gravitating towards that because the market is so new that there isn't that many different brands that people know about. So, you know, if you guys have merch you want us to provide on our shows or anything like that, as handouts, please do provide them. We'll have some Green and Shy stuff coming soon, hats and shirts. So keep posted on that. As far as the events, obviously, there's nothing that we can do about meeting personally, but we will be having these weekly. We'd love to hear about different topics, different things that you guys are curious about, different issues that you guys are needing help in. And this is a time to reflect. I mean, just on a sales capacity, there's a lot of ways to reach out there. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and talk to someone. You know that more than likely they're at home. And if they're not, you shouldn't bother them because they're essential, right? So reach out to people. This is the time to not only catch up with people, but find out what people are doing that you haven't talked to in a few months, because they might be into the industry a little bit more. I've been knowing that. I've been helping out, trying to find connections to medical supplies for some of these groups. And every day you reach out to someone and you find out that they've grown and done something else to help someone else. So there's a lot of different things you can do. As far as the events, I'm sure you know, we had a great panel discussion on March 7th. We did have a great lineup. I mean, Dan Danko of High Times was in talks to come speak at our big networking event at Soundbar. And Dan had an amazing medical panel in place at the Knickerbocker. And these things will take place again in the future. But in the meantime, we want to stay connected with you. If there's people that, sponsors, different companies that want to join us, feel free. All our information will be provided afterwards as well. And then, Dan, I know you're blowing up as far as some of the activity on the search group, especially now that people can't really be in the social scene. They're really looking into the company and fixing things. How is that recruitment market right now?
Recruitment market's stable, but it's really for key positions right now. A lot of companies are laying off. I think we're going to see some consolidation in the cannabis industry. For all my years working in the Silicon Valley, working with venture-funded companies, in new markets, I see certain companies take off, and then you'd see a glut, and you'd see other companies come in that were better run, better management, same type of technology, and basically it was how they positioned themselves. The early companies are educating the market. They're learning how to run a new business, a new operation in a new market. And a lot of times you see new people come in, they hire, they have a different culture. Cultures, I believe, have a lot to do with what happens in success in a company. And it's the quality of people. As you get going further, these margins that are high now are going to shrink. And as these margins shrink, you're going to have better talented people to run and manage these businesses like business people. And that's why we've seen a lot of things fall off. And I think when you see Joe Caltabiano leave Cresco and say his market is going to be his future, what he wants to do is look at depressed markets and buy companies that are depressed. I think there's a market there for that cannabis industry for a while. What do you think of that, Tom, being in the legal side?
That's a burgeoning market in 2024. Depending on where, it depends. All right, and so like in Illinois, that's 2024 market, because their players are coming in, and then they'll get consolidated because they have to go around loopholes and laws. But like if you're talking about California, you're talking about Oregon, you're talking about established states, that's already there. And then it comes down to, all right, look, guys, we don't need all this real estate that we thought we needed. We don't need all these employees that we thought we needed. We don't need everything like that. We need these 5G. So give everybody a credit for $50 a month for their cell phones, and we'll save on our rents. And so I think there's a fairly large recession coming for commercial real estate, which again, imagine, all of Wall Street, all of the financial market areas in Chicago and the banking areas in Chicago just turned into loft apartments. People are going to be working from home. I've been working from home already for over a year, and my business has never been bigger than it is now. Again, a lot of that's luck because of the legalization in Illinois, but a lot of it's also because I positioned myself not on 316 whacker or whatever, like is a Ahoy Polloi address for some sophisticated white-shoed businessman in Chicago or New York. I position myself where people are going to get answers for a problem that they have, and then I have a solution for them. And that's what business is. It's solving people's problems, and people turn to Google every second of the day. 63,000 times a second they ask Google something, and the better you answer it, and then you make yourself easy to contact, and you're approachable, and you're not trying to sell them something except for like the answer, and you're not stupid, you're explaining everything to them. Information is free. The services you have to pay for. That's just the world we live in now. And so I think that, I was a little upset because like then I'm watching the Saturday evening news or like, CNN and everybody's doing my show. Everybody's doing my podcast. I'm like, stop it. I've been interviewing people on a Google Hangout for a couple of years now. And now I got one earbud in, I'm doing the same thing. It's like, all right, well, I guess we're all the same now, which is great. We're all, the playing field has been leveled.
We're just trying to catch up to you, Tom. We're just trying to catch up to you and learn from your wisdom. But you're absolutely right. It's about providing the resources, and there's a lot of things going on. If you're a small business, if you're one of the cannabis small businesses, there's a lot of funding programs as well right now through the SBA. I know one of our previous sponsors, Cannabis, is actually working with a lot of cannabis companies, helping them through that process, letting them know what they qualify for, as well as the requirements. It's not just a lump sum check. There's milestones you have to reach for, different types of withdrawals and things like that. And if you do everything right as well, and it's worth spending the time to do it, you could actually not have to pay it back in some cases. So there's a lot of things that people can look at if you are impacted. I put a link there on the side. If you guys need some help, feel free to reach out to them. But why don't we jump into some questions here? I think that we have a couple here from the crowd here. I know we have one from Amanda. And she'd like to know more about the difference between, hemp and the THC, the indica flowers. What's the difference, or how big of an impact as far as the difference between hemp, and how does that impact on the USA compared to flower? Which one's going to have a bigger impact is what I think she's going to have as her question.
Well, in like 20
between
years.
hemp and flower.
Well, like, again, hemp can have flowers. And so like in 20 years, CBD hemp might be, kind of where it's at now. It may go down a little bit, but they'll be growing the cannabis plant, not for its buds. They will still be growing the cannabis plant for its buds, but they'll be growing it more for its stalk, its seeds, there's some very interesting things about like, well, what can we do with the roots? How can we use the whole plant in all of its various capacities? You know, can we make these oils and plastics that we currently get from petroleum? Can we make, you know, building materials, all those types of things?
I think you touched base on it earlier, because flower, there's really one reason people want it. They're not looking at the industrial aspect. They want it for the THC, because they wanted to hang out with their CB1 receptors all afternoon.
But the CBD2 receptors, the people want the flower for its CBD as well. People are I buy cannabis.
Well, that's my point. That's what I was getting at. It's hard to compare hemp and flower. You can compare CBD and THC, but when you're talking about hemp, the capabilities go beyond that, like the hempcrete, like the plastic, like the fiber, like pretty much anything you want to use it for, really. And if you compare CBD, now as far as CBD to THC, you can't really compare, because different endocannabinoid receptors respond to different things and provide different. They're both essential. You know, your lungs are going to need something different than your liver and your muscles and your back and everything like that.
And based on genetics and strains, I think you find that one of the largest growth areas of the hemp side of the market has been flower. In the past, it's been distillates and isolates. And the flower side is really growing at a fast pace. I was talking to a gentleman in California who basically sold his company, a tobacco company, a smaller one, to a cigarette company, and he now is buying hemp and making hemp cigarettes, buying the flower, looking at looking for plants with, you know, 18% or better of CBD. And the other markets I see is you're going to see special genetics for CBN and CBG and other forms of cannabinoids that are going to be researched, and there's a lot of curiosity going around about pathways and medicine there in the health and the health marketplace, I believe. We're getting a lot of questions here too, guys. So Tom, go ahead, answer that, please. And let's get to
I was going to say, I agree with you that I think that there's going to be a sizable amount of demand for CBD for its particular medicinal benefits, and for THC for not only its medicinal benefits, but also its recreational benefits. But then what I want to see from the cannabis companies are them leveraging the cannabis plant and taking those cash flows to put it into research. But of course, as the plant becomes more federally legal, we need federal dollars to help rectify the problems. It's been illegal to study this plant for any benefits for over 50 years. Well, 50 years exactly, since 1970, the Controlled Substances Act, and probably before that. And so if we can actually get grants to study it like this thing was corn or sorghum or cotton, that plant could really then accelerate its industrial applications. And so, like, you know, one of the things that I've been joking about is, isn't that amazing that the only thing that we needed to do to solve global warming was shut down the world for a month? And so what happens if, you know, April becomes the new like Earth Day month, where it's like, go home for 2 weeks, turn off all the factories, and the earth kind of like heals itself. You know, that could be one application. But when you're going to start making your materials from carbon neutral or even carbon negative, because this stuff can actually return more carbon than it takes, you know, out of the supply chain, you know, those types of fundamental changes to our humanity and our civilization, they're coming. They get closer, and there's more of them every day. It's probably plastic will still be with us, you know, until this hemp plant takes out those plastic bags that you get at Kroger or Hy-Vee or Schnucks or Mariano's, wherever you shop. We're not done with that yet, you know.
And Tom, here's another question. And I'm just going to read it as she has it. She's putting on a cannabis theme event in August. I have vendors that sell CBD edibles, and I'm getting questions about vendors bringing THC edibles. Would that be legal for independent businesses to bring THC edibles to an art market?
No, it's not. Now that gets into the, oh, well, that's fascinating, Mr. Man from Washington, D.C., who sold me a sticker for $30, and for some reason there was an eighth attached to it. And so, again.
The gift or donation, right?
The gift or donation, right. And so the ounce gift or donation, but be very careful with the ounce gift or donation, because you have to remember the weight. when I bought this cannabis plant, which by now is too much weight, but it's one plant. I have a medical card. All the doors are locked. The windows are drawn. I'm complying with the law. When I bought this seed, it weighed 1/100th of or 1/50th of a gram. It was nothing. But if you're gifting these edible brownies, a brownie can very easily weigh a gram. I'm not just a gram, but a brownie can weigh an ounce. It can weigh 30 grams. You know, you could have a large brownie. And so you have to be very, very careful, because they might construe the whole weight of the brownie as being the weight of the cannabis. And so, and again, I'm not a criminal lawyer. I am a retired trial lawyer. I went on a top. And so you have to be careful with using THC and the gifting process, simply because, like, think about your stock. You know, okay, so you brought 5 of these 7/10 of 1 gram, I'm not 1 ounce brownies. You're over your limits, you know, and so, like, you could very, very easily get law enforcement asking you pesky questions, and then you'll call me, and then I'll be like, again, I am not a criminal lawyer. I'm not. I'm sorry.
I also, and maybe touch base on this too, but there are loopholes or gray area. For instance, if I were to have 10 people over to cater a few dinner for them at a private location, a private residence, gets a little fuzzy there.
Oh, yeah, there's no, you're not making any money. And then not only that, now you have 10 people that came over, and everybody brought their 1 ounce that they're allowed to gift. And so everybody gifts an ounce. Now you're up to 10, you know,
300
it's
grams.
different, right? You know, it's different than you walking around with a bag with individually wrapped 1 ounce brownies that you're gifting while you're marketing your menu options, you know, and that can be a risk. But then you have to you have to weigh you have to take the full cost benefit analysis. Who's your regulator that you're worried about? All right. You know, who have you pissed off that's going to call the cops and say, go shut her down? All those things. And so it may be more trouble than it's worth, but I don't want to, like, stomp on the entrepreneurial spirit in Illinois, you know?
So
Dan, this might be a good question for you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Dan.
I got a question here. We should start winding down. We're down to like 4 minutes. And I've got a question here from John Paul on the beverage industry. He's saying beverages are projected to become 20% of the market, but have some big distribution hurdles to overcome and barely have a presence. What do you see the beverages in Illinois? I see that coming forth over time, but I don't think we're there yet. But at the dispensaries, you can buy beverages right now. I've had a few, and I enjoy them. It's just the dosing side has not really been developed accurately. I don't believe it's really different.
Yeah, there's too much cough syrup too. And so, like, I think you're right about the dosing, but then also, like, I can go to Benny's Beverage Depot and I can get some CBD. I can get a 6-pack of CBD soda for like $15, which is hilarious. But I'm really excited about Hi-Fi Hops from Lagunitas in the sense that it's now, I believe they have 2 options. They have like one that's, I think, 5 milligrams of THC and one that's 5 milligrams THC, 5 milligrams CBD. And so when you have those micro dosed type 12 ounce things, because you're trying to understand averages about people, and most people, they really do not want more than 30 milligrams or 50 milligrams of an edible. That would be like pretty messed up. And then, so like if you're talking about like 30 to 50 milligrams of an edible, people are used to drinking between 6 to 12 beers. And so using that 5 milligram dosage, that really, really helps. And so then it's also the big problem that they have right now is I go into a bar, I'm like, I don't drink. Give me a Hi-Fi Hops. We are not allowed to sell that here because they don't have a cannabis dispensary license.
Well, there's also the people, there's also the,
go ahead.
There's also the issue on that's the one side of the spectrum, but some of these, they're kind of like the Neo drop the edge of your water. They come with 500 milligrams in a little size squeezed bottle that you can just add to your drinks. And I think the big hurdle for them is how do they regulate over serving or, things of that nature, because let's just face it, there's a lot of amateurs out there that are not waiting their 30 minutes to an hour to see if they're actually took a right dose.
Well,
They just
that's
keep
why
on
you would
taking it.
have, yeah, but that's one of the reasons why you would have a standardized dose. And you could do it like, here's your 5, here's your 10 milligram. 10 milligram can be like, Bud Ice, this or Platinum Ice or something like that, 6% of this, or like there's a lot of dank beers in Chicago have like 6 to 8% alcohol, and those suckers can mess you up, because they're very high in alcohol. And so, if you have that distinction between the 5 milligram and then the 10 milligram beer, for lack of a better term, it's not a beer, I'm sure they'll kind of come up with a new word for it, but that can continue that lag time. So you're not going to get the big 50 milligrams like you could with the little meal that you squirt into your water. And then suddenly, you're being too high on edibles is something that you remember.
You certainly, I've actually had that encounter. I was, early on, I had some 20 milligram and I took one, and that's usually pretty good, but it didn't hit me. So I took another one, and then I had a little bit of a problem.
See, and that's just 40. That just would have been like eight of these beers at the 5 milligram. And then if you're getting a little too tweaked, like they had some that had just THC. They had some that had a 1-to-1 balance. And then eventually, if they would have one that just had the CBD version. So like, depending on how messed up you feel, you'd be like, give me that CBD beer, and you can chug that, or give me the CBD joint. It's amazing that they have these antagonistic systems just in the same cannabis flower between these two cannabinoids. So like when you start to get too high, which again, I always use for the slippery slope argument, because it's different than cocaine and heroin and alcohol and cigarettes and sugar and McDonald's, because you don't self-administer. Everybody, after they've had too much THC, they start to get spooked, start to get freaked out, and they go, I'm good, bro.
And you also don't have any endocannabinoid receptors in your brain stem, so you can't overdose.
By the way, I want to go back to John Paul, who asked a question about the beverage.
Well, we got to wrap this up.
And then we got to wrap it up. But there's a magazine that's relatively new called Cannabis Products Magazine, and it's put out by BNP Publications. And Doug Peckenbaugh, who happens to be the group editorial man, he runs snacks, bakery, meat, candy, food, and beverage. And they're here in Chicago. And I think it's a very good magazine to start off if you're interested in the food and beverage marketplace. And I'm not putting out anything for him other than I read it and I enjoy it. And it's like this month's issue on R&D and production insights into alcohol, alternative beverages, hard candy, mints, chocolate, and more. And he interviews a lot of people in the industry, talks about the equipment processing and what takes place in distribution chains. Very interesting. So I know we have to wrap it up for this week, and we want to thank our guest, Tom Howard, who, Tom, you've been so helpful to us at our shows, and we want to give you a plug to tune into his show at 2 o'clock on Wednesday afternoons, correct?
2 o'clock on Wednesday. And then we also have 3 o'clock on Sunday show. And then today I shot one on operating agreements that I have to go like chop up and edit. And then, I'm thrilled that there's not going to be another application window for the foreseeable future. So I got to make a whole bunch more product and a whole bunch more content.
Good. And if we didn't answer your questions on this show, we'll try and get our questions answered to you via email. Alton and I will work on that. Alton, as always, man, the Turk, it's a blast working with you. Tom, always, as you said on our panels and has been a keynote at one of our events, we love having you. You're fun, you're talented, and in this industry, we recommend you highly to people that we know, and it's a pleasure having you. Thank you for joining us tonight.
And I'd like to thank you guys as well, Dan. Tom, it's always a pleasure. Tom, you've been a key in our scene as far as our panels, always providing good input. And, let us know what you guys want to hear about. We're going to do this at least once a week. If we get enough activity, we'll do it more than once a week. We're looking for companies, looking for different topics. And, just every show will bring up new interesting things. This show this week was brought to you, since it is April, by the number 420 and the letter P for Pink Panther. I'll put a description. Every week we'll go through a new strain. This is a very high sativa strain. Very interesting for you energetic people that also need to relax. So there's a little link, Leafly, if you ever want to look up strains. They have a very cool way to categorize different types of strains by sativa, indica, color, terpenes. Very cool place to learn and catch up on things. That's where I started. I know Dan's advocate of it. I don't know if Tom uses it or not, but I put a link for Pink Panther in there to get you started. Thank you for joining us, everybody.
Good. So signing off, thank you for joining us tonight. Until next week, have a great week. Stay safe, wear your mask, and keep social distancing alive while we have to. Want everybody to be healthy. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
Ciao for now.